4 days before the election, we were warned. Again, keep in mind this was before the election. You may remember us talking about this article just before the election, an article by Ron Suskind, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. 4 days before the election. Quote, races tend to tighten at the end. But the question is not so much the difference between the candidates' vote totals or projections of them, as it is what Mr. Trump can get his supporters to believe. Trump's army of his most ardent followers are loyal to him as a person, not as president. That army Trump can direct in the difficult days ahead and take with him wherever he goes. He may activate it. He may bargain with it, depending on how the electoral chips fall. It's his insurance policy. No matter how the votes split, there's an expectation among officials that Trump will claim some kind of victory on November 4th, even if it's a victory he claims was hijacked by fraud. This could come in conjunction with statements supported by carefully chosen, quote, facts that the election was rigged, as he's long been warning. If the streets then fill with outraged people, he can easily summon or prompt or encourage troublemakers among his loyalists to turn a peaceful crowd into a sea of mayhem. They might improvise on their own in sparking violence, presuming it pleases their leader. It's 4 days before the election. That chilling reporting published in the New York Times October 30th by Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist Ron Suskind. It was based on reporting with 24 government officials and staffers, including senior people who were still serving in the Trump administration at that time. And it is harrowing to go back and read that, intensely prophetic reporting after what we've been through this week with the attack on the Capitol. Suskind and his sources were right, not just about the ginned-up fraud claims, but about the violence the president would stoke too. This president still has 12 days in office. Does he seem well to you at this point? Think these last 12 days will be peaceful and no more damage done? After his explosive reporting forewarning the events that have now come to pass this week, Ron Suskind has been doing new reporting now on what can be done in its aftermath, what paths are available to try to limit the danger of what comes next. Joining us now is Ron Suskind, deeply sourced Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist. Mr. Suskind, it's a real honor to have you here tonight. Thanks very much for taking time.
Sure, Rachel.
So it is unnerving to go back and read that piece from October again today because of how the worst case scenarios there were so spot on. What has your continued reporting indicated to you in terms of options now, given what happened on Wednesday?
Well, we saw the Army. Interestingly, I talked to a White House official close to Trump, as close as they get. I said, how big is that Army, would you say? Folks who are sympathetic to or equally ready to activate among the wide base of Trump supporters. And the estimates are somewhere in the vicinity of 20% of Trump voters are either sympathetic or ready to be activated in some way. Well, that comes to about 15 million people. The fear has always been that Donald Trump would do precisely what he did once he had corrupted the legislative and legal processes of the United States in regard to money. He would come to the end of that string and he would pull the trigger, which is what he did on Wednesday. Now we're in this next stage that many senior officials feared the most, in which he has essentially done a forced demonstration, someone at the Pentagon said yesterday. This is something that happens sometimes in corrupt or unstable states, that someone with a personal army wants to show their strength by a mobilization. That's essentially what happened on Wednesday. This army is Trump's. He activated them, and he may well again in the next 12 days. That's what people are fearing deeply now, and why there is enormous fervor to try to figure out a way to get the president off the stage, and in a way create almost a captive quality. Somebody used the Napoleon to Elba idea. Get him on an island. Twitter and others taking away his tools for signaling. It's going to be difficult, though, as long as he's the president, he's got the force of this army personally committed to him, as well as the Article II powers of the presidency in a left and right hand where he can work them against one another. That's a uniquely dangerous situation for the United States in its history.
And Ron, how does that, particularly because you're talking to White House officials, people who are close to the president, How does that jive with what we're able to see from the outside, the sense of urgency being driven by Democrats in Congress to try to call for the president's resignation, to call for the use of the 25th Amendment, to start impeachment proceedings, to talk about removal, to talk about a federal ban from office? Those things that we can see in motion, or at least being contemplated from the outside, are there other avenues or anything else happening on the inside to either make any of those things happen or to pursue some other way of, as you say, sort of neutralizing or isolating the president?
Well, there's a great deal of focus, Rachel, on the ban from office, actually. Several of them have talked about the fact that if Donald Trump can claim and maybe present himself strongly as a viable candidate for 2024 and walk out of office intact with that status, he will have enormous power and latitude over the coming years in the United States, again, with this enormous, largely red America army that is his, as well as his global reach. Someone in the intelligence community I've been talking to for, well, a great deal of time, talked about their fears of Donald Trump outside of the White House in the days after he leaves. He could be granted any sort of support by foreign governments, including money, financial support. He could have deals that he cuts in which foreign powers support him in what will be his next run. That's why people are saying if there's a way he can be banned for life in this period by all the mechanisms that you laid out rather beautifully a few minutes ago. That's something that I hear Democrats and Republicans saying that would be best, so that there's not even a chance that this man may return to the Article II powers of the presidency. That's a great fear.
The only way to get there, though, is by conviction in the Senate, by 2/3 of the Senate, and then a subsequent vote for that ban. And so this path goes through Republican senators, as it has from the beginning.
It does. And what's interesting is you see already, Josh Hawley holding up his fist. They're auditioning for the Trump army, saying, look, maybe your general will be leaving. If that's the case, let me step in. I will be the new general. And that's the problem we now really are in. It's almost, I think, best to think about this almost in military terms. This army is the president's army. How can that army be disempowered? How can the president be disempowered as their leader? And what happens to that army that the president is filled with fervor that a fraud has occurred, a crime against them, Americans, patriots, who feel they now are revolutionaries? To excise that fervor, that belief, is really the challenge America faces now, because either Donald Trump or someone will activate that fervor. That's where we are now. And I think disempowering the president, figure out a way to ban him for life, in a way hemming him in so that he can not be an active political actor with this sort of power, frankly, is a goal that even many Republicans are saying, well, that would be better for me too. I don't necessarily want to be of a party run by this man. I would like to have a chance to maybe recast the Republican Party. You hear that from lots of them in private. The question is, will action occur under a very tight time frame that is really one of self-correction for the democracy? And who will lead that? Will the political will be summoned? We're only 2 days after the attack now, Rachel. You can already hear the spin occurring on Fox News and elsewhere among some of his supporters. It's been overplayed. The president really didn't incite or drive it as people think. There were other agents involved. All of that is this difficult moment in which we are seeing what everyone saw and what everyone felt, that opportunity for historical change based on that, starting to get twisted, starting to slip away. That's why this very much in this period, historically, is the time for action. And the question is, what action will occur under a very, very narrow band of possibilities? facilities.
Ron Suskind, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist. Ron, thank you for being here to talk about this tonight. It is chilling, but also focusing. Appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.